The Zephyrian exploration vessel Stellar Dawn drifted silently through the outer reaches of the Sol system, its bioluminescent hull pulsing with excitement. Commander Vex 9 studied the holographic displays with growing amazement, her tentacles dancing across the control interfaces as new data streamed in. "Remarkable," she whispered, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her species. "The third planet shows clear signs of recovering from what appears to have been a massive extinction event. Look at these atmospheric readings, Science Officer Krill." Krill floated closer, his jellyfish-like form undulating with curiosity. The Zephyrians had spent 3 centuries mapping this galaxy, cataloging dead worlds and failed civilizations. Finding a planet bouncing back from near-total destruction was unprecedented. "The oxygen levels are stabilizing beautifully," Krill observed, his bioluminescent spots flickering in patterns that indicated deep thought. "Whatever happened here, the ecosystem is healing itself with extraordinary efficiency. These forests growing over the ruins of cities show adaptation rates we've never documented before." Commander Vex 9 had led dozens of exploration missions, but something about this world felt different. The electromagnetic signatures suggested a civilization that had once reached impressive technological heights before suffering a catastrophic collapse. Yet the planet wasn't dead. It was thriving in ways that defied their understanding of post-apocalyptic recovery. "Initiate deep-range scans," she ordered. "I want to know everything about what happened here. If a species managed to survive extinction-level events, we need to understand how." The Zephyrian collective prided itself on being shepherds of younger civilizations. They had guided 47 species through their early spacefaring years, sharing technology and wisdom accumulated over millennia. Their vast database contained the histories of countless worlds, the rise and fall of empires, the patterns of success and failure that governed galactic civilization. But Earth puzzled them. The scans revealed massive crater formations, suggesting asteroid impacts or nuclear warfare. Ancient cities lay buried under new growth. Yet life flourished with an intensity that bordered on aggressive. The plant life showed genetic diversity that should have taken millions of years to develop, not the few thousand their dating suggested. "Commander, I'm detecting artificial structures," reported Navigation Officer Zen, her crystalline form refracting the bridge lighting into rainbow patterns. "They're well hidden, but there's definitely organized construction in the northern continent's mountainous regions." Vex 9 felt a familiar thrill. Contact with a recovering civilization was the highlight of any Zephyrian explorer's career. They would observe first, following strict protocols to avoid contamination. Then, when appropriate, they would make gentle contact and offer guidance. It was their sacred duty as elder species. "Take us into closer orbit but maintain stealth protocols," she commanded. "If there are survivors, we don't want to frighten them." The Stellar Dawn adjusted its position, advanced camouflage systems rendering it invisible to primitive detection methods. Through enhanced optical arrays, they began mapping the hidden settlements, scattered across the planet's surface. What they found exceeded their wildest expectations. The settlements weren't crude survival camps. They were sophisticated installations built into mountainsides and underground caverns, connected by networks that suggested remarkable engineering. The architecture was unlike anything in their databases, utilizing the natural landscape in ways that seemed almost organic. "These people learned to hide," Krill observed with admiration. "Look at how they've integrated their technology with natural formations. From standard orbital distance, you'd never know they were there." The more they studied, the more impressed they became. Solar collection systems disguised as rock formations, hydroponics bays carved into cliff faces, communication arrays that looked like natural mineral deposits. These humans, as their databases identified them, had developed impressive adaptive capabilities. "Their population appears stable," reported Zen. "I'm detecting approximately 50,000 individuals across various sites. Small communities, but well-organized and clearly thriving." Vex 9 felt the warm satisfaction that came with discovering a successful survival story. The galaxy was filled with the bones of civilizations that couldn't adapt when disaster struck. Finding one that had not only survived but learned to thrive filled her with hope for the younger species the collective was currently shepherding. "Begin cultural observation protocols," she ordered. I want to understand their social structure before we consider contact. A species that survived their own near extinction deserves our careful attention. The observation began in earnest. The Zephyrians were masters of patient study, and they settled into their favorite type of mission: watching a remarkable species recover from catastrophe. The humans moved through their settlements with purpose and efficiency. Their technology, while primitive by Zephyrian standards, showed impressive innovation. They had learned to work with their environment rather than against it, creating closed-loop systems that would have made seasoned Zephyrian ecologists proud. Look at their agricultural methods, Krill said with growing excitement. They're using vertical farming techniques that maximize yield while maintaining soil health. And these water reclamation systems are beautifully designed. The social interactions fascinated them even more. The humans worked together with a coordination that suggested strong community bonds. Children learned alongside adults. Knowledge was shared freely. Despite their small numbers, they maintained cultural traditions that spoke to deep psychological resilience. They're remarkable, Vex 9 murmured, watching a group of human youngsters learn to tend hydroponic gardens. Whatever disaster befell their species, they've transformed it into wisdom. This is exactly the kind of adaptive intelligence the collective values. Days passed as they documented human activities. The Zephyrians began to develop genuine affection for these survivors. Their databases contained thousands of post-disaster civilizations, but few showed such successful adaptation. Most became desperate, aggressive, or simply faded away. These humans had found balance. The settlements operated like clockwork. Maintenance crews kept everything functioning smoothly. Research groups worked on improving their technology. Artists created beautiful works that decorated common areas. It was a picture of post-apocalyptic civilization at its finest. I believe we should consider formal contact soon, Vex 9 announced during their daily briefing. They've clearly stabilized their society. Sharing our knowledge could help accelerate their recovery. Her crew agreed enthusiastically. Making contact with successfully adapted civilizations was rewarding work. They would offer medicine, improved technology, and most importantly, connection to the greater galactic community. These humans had earned the right to know they weren't alone. But Krill had been conducting deeper scans of the settlement's infrastructure, and something was beginning to trouble him. The power signatures were stronger than they should be for the technology they could observe. The materials analysis revealed alloys that seemed too advanced for a recovering civilization. "Commander," he said slowly, "I think we should extend our observation period. There are some readings I can't quite explain." Vex 9 trusted her science officer's instincts. "What kind of readings?" Power generation levels that don't match what we're seeing. And some of these tunnels they've carved go much deeper than necessary for their current population. It's as if they're preparing for something we haven't identified yet. The commander considered this. Extended observation was always wise when dealing with species that had survived major disasters. Sometimes trauma created behavioral patterns that weren't immediately obvious. They would watch longer before making contact. It was a decision that would save their lives. As they continued monitoring, subtle details began to emerge that challenged their initial assessment. The humans weren't just surviving. They weren't just recovering. They were building something much more complex than a simple post-disaster society. The workshops they had initially cataloged as repair facilities were actually manufacturing centers producing components they couldn't identify. The communication arrays weren't just for local coordination but were clearly designed for much longer range transmission. The deep tunnel systems weren't just storage but appeared to be preparation for something significant. "Commander," Zen said quietly, "I'm detecting movement patterns that don't match their daily routines. Large groups moving through those deep tunnels at regular intervals. And these aren't maintenance activities." Vex 9 felt the first stirrings of unease. What kind of movement patterns? Organized. Disciplined. Almost like military formations. But I can't determine what they're training for. The observation data began to paint a picture that didn't match their initial optimistic assessment. These weren't simple survivors rebuilding their world. They were preparing for something specific, and that preparation involved capabilities their surface activities didn't reveal. Krill's deeper scans finally yielded results that chilled them to their cores. "Commander, we need to move to a safer distance immediately," he announced, his bioluminescence flickering in alarm patterns. "I've been analyzing the composition of their deeper installations. These aren't survival bunkers, they're weapons manufacturing facilities." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of their ship's biomechanical systems. "Weapons for what?" Vex 9 asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer would terrify her. "Unknown, but the scale suggests they're not intended for local conflicts. And Commander, the metallurgy I'm detecting indicates they've achieved technological levels far beyond what they're displaying on the surface." The realization hit her like a cold wave. The humans weren't innocent survivors rebuilding their civilization. They were something else entirely. And they had been deliberately hiding their true capabilities from any potential observers. The Zephyrians had stumbled upon something that challenged everything they thought they knew about this system and the species that called it home. The Stellar Dawn retreated to the outer system while its crew struggled to process what they were discovering. Commander Vex 9 authorized the use of their most advanced scanning arrays, despite the risk of detection. Whatever was happening on Earth demanded a complete reassessment. "The deeper we look, the less sense this makes," Krill reported, his usual calm demeanor showing cracks of anxiety. "These installations extend for kilometers underground. The power requirements alone suggest technology that rivals our own." Science Officer Yin joined the analysis, her insectoid form chittering with nervous energy. As their xenoarchaeology specialist, she had studied the ruins of hundreds of civilizations. "I've been analyzing the architectural patterns. This isn't recent construction, Commander. Some of these deep facilities show signs of being hundreds of years old." The implication struck the bridge crew like a physical blow. If the humans had been building these installations for centuries, then the disaster they had witnessed wasn't a civilization-ending catastrophe. It was something else entirely. "Pull up the historical scans of this system," Vex 9 ordered, her tentacles trembling with growing apprehension. "I want to review every piece of data we have about this planet's development." The holographic displays filled with timeline data spanning the last 1,000 years of Zephyrian observations. Earth had been catalogued as a developing world with a young technological species. Their last detailed survey had been conducted 400 years ago, when humans were just beginning to explore their own solar system. "Here," Yin pointed to a data cluster. "4 centuries ago, we classified them as Level 2 civilization. Primitive spaceflight, basic nuclear technology, divided into competing nation-states. Standard developmental pattern for young species." Krill overlaid current readings with the historical data. "Look at the energy signatures. The baseline power generation has increased by a factor of 50. But it's all underground. From orbital observation, they would appear to have regressed technologically." The picture emerging was deeply disturbing. The humans hadn't suffered a civilization-ending disaster. They had deliberately hidden their technological advancement, creating the appearance of a post-apocalyptic recovery, while secretly developing capabilities that rivaled the galaxy's elder races. "Why would they do this?" whispered Zen, her crystalline form dimming with fear. "Why pretend to be primitive survivors?" Commander Vex 9 had commanded exploration vessels for 2 centuries. She had encountered defensive civilizations, aggressive species, and even a few that had tried to hide from galactic contact. But she had never seen anything like this level of calculated deception. "Run a deep analysis of those weapon signatures," she ordered. "I need to know what they're building down there." The results took 6 hours to compile, and when they appeared, the bridge crew stared in horrified silence. The weapons weren't conventional by any galactic standard. They were something entirely new, utilizing principles that Zephyrian science barely understood. "These energy patterns don't match any known technology in our databases," Krill reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "But based on the power requirements and the focusing arrays I'm detecting, they appear to be designed for long-range engagement." "How long-range?" Vex 9 asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Interstellar range, Commander." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The humans hadn't just developed advanced weapons. They had developed weapons specifically designed to engage targets in other star systems. The implications were staggering. Yin was analyzing the settlement patterns with new understanding. These aren't random survivor communities. They're strategically positioned near natural resources required for advanced metallurgy and rare element extraction. Everything about their placement suggests long-term military planning. The Zephyrians began a comprehensive review of human behavior patterns, looking for clues they had missed. What they found painted a picture of a species that had spent centuries preparing for something that defied galactic norms. The humans moved through their settlements with the discipline of a military organization. But it was subtle. Children were educated in technical skills that seemed unnecessarily advanced for subsistence communities. Adults rotated through different duties with the efficiency of trained specialists. The entire civilization operated like a single, coordinated organism. Look at this. Yin highlighted a section of their observations. These aren't separate communities. They're components of a single distributed system. Each settlement specializes in different aspects of their overall operation. Manufacturing here, research there, training facilities in the mountain complexes. The realization was chilling. The humans hadn't just survived their disasters. They had used them as cover to transform their entire civilization into something unprecedented in galactic history. Commander, I'm detecting increased activity in the deep facilities, reported Zen. Large-scale movements, power spikes, and what appears to be equipment testing. Vex 9 felt ice forming in her reproductive sacs. Equipment testing? Yes, ma'am. And based on the energy signatures, I believe they know we're here. The bridge fell silent except for the faint biorhythmic humming of their ship's living systems. If the humans were aware of their presence and were conducting weapons tests, the situation had moved beyond observation into potential danger. How could they detect us? Vex 9 demanded. Our stealth systems are beyond anything a Level 2 civilization should be able to penetrate. Krill was frantically analyzing their scanning data. Commander, I don't think they're Level 2 anymore. Based on what I'm seeing in those deep installations, I would classify current human technology as Level 4, possibly Level 5. The number hit them like a physical blow. Level 5 civilizations were considered peers to the Zephyrian collective. They possessed interstellar travel, advanced weapons systems, and the capability to threaten galactic stability if they chose aggression over cooperation. But humans had achieved this advancement while maintaining the appearance of primitive survivors. The deception was so complete that even advanced Zephyrian sensors had been fooled until they began deep analysis. What are your recommendations? Science officer? Vex 9 asked formally. Krill hesitated before answering. Immediate withdrawal to the nearest collective outpost. This requires senior analysis and possibly a diplomatic first contact team. We're dealing with something completely outside our experience. Before Vex 9 could respond, Zen announced with barely controlled panic, Commander, I'm detecting multiple launches from the planet's surface, the tactical display filled with new contacts rising from Earth's gravity well. Not the crude rockets they had expected from a primitive civilization, but sleek craft that accelerated with impossible smoothness. Within minutes, they were matching the stellar dawn's position in the outer system. How many? Vex 9 asked, her voice steady despite her growing terror. 12 ships, Commander, and they're using propulsion technology I don't recognize. The human vessels arranged themselves in a formation that spoke of military precision and advanced tactical thinking. They weren't approaching aggressively, but their positioning left no doubt about their capabilities. Incoming transmission, announced their communications specialist, tentacles quivering with nervous energy. On screen, the holographic display filled with the image of a human figure, female by their species standards, with graying hair and eyes that held depths of knowledge that seemed ancient despite her relatively young biological age. She wore simple clothes, but her bearing suggested absolute authority. Greetings, explorers from the Zephyrian collective, she said in perfect Zephyrian standard language, her pronunciation flawless despite vocal cords not designed for their musical tones. I am Director Sarah Chen of the Human Continuity Project. We've been monitoring your observation of our world for the past several days. Vex 9 struggled to maintain composure. Not only had the humans detected them, but they knew exactly who they were and could communicate in their own language. The level of preparation this implied was staggering. "You have us at a disadvantage," Vex 9 replied carefully. "We were not aware that humanity had achieved interstellar communication capabilities." Director Chen smiled, and it wasn't entirely reassuring. "There's quite a lot about humanity that isn't apparent from casual observation, Commander. We've been aware of galactic civilization for some time now. We've been watching you watch others." The words sent cold shock through every Zephyrian on the bridge. The humans hadn't just hidden their advancement from passing observers. They had been actively studying galactic civilization without revealing themselves. "We mean no harm," Vex 9 said quickly. "The collective has peaceful intentions toward all developing species." "We know," Chen replied, calmly. "We've observed your interactions with 47 different civilizations over the past 4 centuries. Your records are quite thorough, and your methods generally benevolent. However, we have chosen a different path for human development." The human director gestured, and new displays appeared showing detailed schematics of Zephyrian technology, maps of collective space, and analysis of their diplomatic protocols. The depth of their intelligence was breathtaking and terrifying. "How long have you been watching us?" Vex 9 asked weakly. "Since your first surveys of our system." Chen answered matter-of-factly. "We learned early that survival meant understanding our galactic neighbors before they understood us. The universe isn't as peaceful as your collective likes to believe." Krill leaned forward, scientific curiosity overriding his fear. "What happened to your surface civilization?" "Our scans indicate a major catastrophe." Chen's expression darkened. "We were contacted by another galactic civilization 60 years before you first visited our system. The Devourers made us an offer similar to yours: guidance, technology, peaceful integration into galactic society." She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried undertones of carefully controlled rage. "They were scouts for a harvest fleet. By the time we understood their true intentions, half our planet was stripped of resources, and 80% of our population was dead. But we learned valuable lessons from the experience." The Zephyrians exchanged horrified glances. The Devourers were a nightmare from the galaxy's dark past. A civilization that had been destroyed by the combined efforts of multiple elder races centuries ago. "The Devourers were eliminated over 200 years ago," Vex 9 protested. "The main force, yes," Chen agreed. "But harvest fleets operate independently for centuries. We've tracked down and eliminated 7 more groups since our initial encounter. The galaxy is more dangerous than the collective admits, and peaceful species don't survive first contact with entities that view them as resources." The human ships around them suddenly didn't look like simple escort vessels. They looked like the products of a civilization that had learned hard lessons about galactic survival and had spent generations preparing to never be victims again. "So you built all of this to fight the Devourers?" Yin asked. Chen shook her head. "We built this to fight anyone who threatens humanity's survival. The Devourers taught us that peaceful intentions and good faith are luxuries that young civilizations can't afford. We chose to prepare for the worst, while hoping for the best." The scope of human preparation was becoming clear. They hadn't just survived an attack by one of the galaxy's most feared civilizations. They had learned from it, adapted, and created something entirely new in response. "What happens now?" Vex 9 asked, uncertain whether they were speaking with potential allies or future enemies. Director Chen's smile returned, but this time it held warmth alongside its underlying steel. "Now, Commander, we have a conversation about humanity's place in galactic civilization, and whether the collective is ready for neighbors who refuse to be helpless." Director Chen invited the Zephyrian crew to a formal meeting on the human flagship, a vessel that appeared from seemingly empty space as its advanced cloaking systems deactivated. The Endeavor was larger than any ship in the collective's fleet, and clearly designed with capabilities that challenged every assumption about human technology. Commander Vex 9 accepted the invitation despite her crew's obvious nervousness. Understanding humanity's true nature had become more than a scientific curiosity. It was potentially crucial for galactic security. The interior of the human ship defied expectations. Instead of the cramped, utilitarian spaces typical of military vessels, the corridors were spacious and filled with natural light from some advanced source. Plants grew in integrated gardens, and the air carried the scent of living ecosystems. We learned that maintaining psychological health requires connection to natural systems, Chen explained as she led them through the ship. Our ancestors made the mistake of believing technology should replace nature, instead of working with it. They passed through sections that showcased human adaptation and innovation. Manufacturing bays where materials were grown rather than assembled. Computer systems that functioned through biological networks rather than purely electronic ones. Weapons arrays that seemed almost organic in their design. Everything we build now follows biomimetic principles, Chen continued. We learned from observing your ships, actually. Your biomechanical technology inspired many of our developments. The revelation that humans had been studying Zephyrian technology without their knowledge sent fresh chills through Vex 9's crew. The level of subterfuge implied capabilities that went far beyond simple survival instincts. They entered a vast central chamber, where dozens of humans worked at stations that seemed to grow from the floor itself. Holographic displays showed star maps covering the local galactic region, with markers indicating numerous points of interest. This is our Strategic Operations Center, Chen announced. From here, we coordinate humanity's response to galactic threats. The displays showed more than simple defensive preparations. There were detailed analyses of multiple alien civilizations, tracking data on thousands of ships, and what appeared to be real-time intelligence gathering across dozens of star systems. You're monitoring the entire sector, Krill observed with growing amazement and alarm. Among other things, Chen confirmed. We learned that survival requires information. Passive observation wasn't enough. After the Devourer attack, we needed to understand everything happening in our local region. A new human approached their group, introducing himself as Admiral Marcus Torres. Unlike Chen's civilian appearance, he wore clearly military attire and carried himself with the bearing of a career warrior. Director, the collective representatives should be aware of Project Watchtower before they return to their superiors, he said without preamble. Chen nodded. Show them. The displays around them shifted to reveal a three-dimensional map of the galaxy's spiral arm. Hundreds of markers appeared, scattered across dozens of star systems. Each marker pulsed with steady light, creating a web of coverage that stretched across vast distances. We've placed monitoring stations throughout this region, Torres explained. Fully automated, completely undetectable by conventional sensors. They've been operating for over a century. Vex 9 felt her respiratory chambers constrict. You've been watching everyone. Everyone, Torres confirmed. Every ship movement, every communication, every technological development. We know about the collective's activities. The hegemony's expansion. The Silent One's experiments. And 17 other civilizations your databases don't even recognize. The scope of human intelligence gathering was staggering. They possessed information about galactic civilization that surpassed even the collective's extensive records. Why reveal this to us? Vex 9 asked, struggling to understand human motivations. Chen gestured to another section of displays. Because the galaxy is heading toward a crisis that none of the established civilizations want to acknowledge. The new images showed astronomical data, gravitational anomalies, and energy signatures that defied conventional physics. Deep space monitoring stations recorded phenomena that suggested something massive moving in the galaxy's outer regions. The Devourers weren't an isolated threat, Chen explained. They were refugees from something worse. Our long-range sensors have detected evidence of a civilization that consumes entire stellar regions. The Devourers called them the Harvester Kings. Yin chittered with disbelief. Impossible. Nothing could threaten entire stellar regions. Admiral Torres looked grim. We thought the same thing until we analyzed the data. Look at these gravitational patterns. 3. The displays showed star charts spanning thousands of years. Stellar formations that should have been stable showed evidence of systematic disruption. Stars going dark, not through natural processes but through artificial intervention. entire systems showing signs of having their matter converted into something else. The Harvester Kings don't just attack civilizations, Torres continued. They disassemble solar systems and use the raw matter to build something we don't understand yet. They've been working their way through the galaxy for millennia, and they're headed in this direction. The Zephyrians stared at the evidence with growing horror. If these projections were accurate, the threat facing the galaxy dwarfed anything in their historical records. How long do we have? Vex 9 asked quietly. Our best estimates suggest they'll reach the outer systems of this region within 50 to 70 years. Chen replied. Maybe less if they accelerate their approach. Krill studied the data with scientific precision despite his obvious fear. Why hasn't the collective detected this? Because they're not looking for it. Torres answered bluntly. The established galactic civilizations are focused on managing younger species and maintaining their current territories. They're not prepared for existential threats. Chen brought up new displays showing detailed analyses of galactic military capabilities. The numbers were sobering. Even combined, the known civilizations lacked the technology and coordination necessary to face a threat of this magnitude. This is why we chose isolation and preparation over peaceful integration. Chen explained. We knew that survival would require capabilities beyond conventional galactic norms. The displays shifted again, showing human technological developments that made even Zephyrian science look primitive. Weapons that could affect stellar processes. Defensive systems that operated on quantum scales. Ships that could manipulate space-time itself. We spent centuries preparing for the wrong enemy, Torres admitted. The Devourers were just the beginning. Everything we've built since then has been designed to face the Harvester Kings. Vex 9 finally understood the true scope of human deception. They hadn't hidden their advancement out of paranoia or aggression. They had been preparing to defend the galaxy against a threat that no one else was willing to acknowledge. What do you want from the collective? She asked. Chen's expression became intensely serious. We want them to stop treating the galaxy like a peaceful garden, where younger civilizations can be gently guided toward enlightenment. The universe is a battlefield. And pretty soon, everyone in this region is going to have to choose between fighting together or dying separately. Admiral Torres activated new displays showing human fleet compositions and strategic plans. The scale was breathtaking. Thousands of ships, orbital installations that could move between star systems, weapons platforms hidden throughout the local region. We're ready to fight the Harvester Kings, he announced. But we can't do it alone. Even with everything we've built, we'll need every civilization in this sector working together. The human proposals were unlike anything in galactic diplomatic history. Instead of gradual integration and careful cultural exchange, they were suggesting immediate military alliance and technology sharing on an unprecedented scale. The collective leadership will never accept this, Vex 9 protested. They'll see it as human aggression disguised as protection. Then they'll die when the Harvester Kings arrive, Chen replied without emotion. Along with every other civilization that can't adapt to reality. Torres brought up one final set of displays. Deep space images showing the aftermath of Harvester King attacks. Star systems reduced to empty space. Planets stripped down to their cores. Entire stellar regions converted into vast mechanical constructs of unknown purpose. This is what happened to the civilizations that tried to negotiate or hide, he explained. This is what happens to species that can't fight back. The images were devastating in their implications. The galaxy's peaceful evolution was about to be shattered by forces that viewed all organic life as raw materials. We're not asking the collective to trust us out of goodwill, Chen continued. We're asking them to look at the evidence and make rational decisions about survival. Commander Vex 9 realized that her mission had transformed completely. She had arrived expecting to catalog a recovering civilization and offer assistance. Instead, she had discovered that humanity represented the galaxy's best hope for survival against a threat that defied conventional understanding. What happens if the collective refuses to believe your evidence? She asked. Chen and Torres exchanged glances that spoke of long-held concerns. Then we'll protect who we can and prepare for a much smaller galaxy, Chen answered. Humanity learned a long time ago that you can't save people who refuse to save themselves. The meeting concluded with humans providing the Zephyrians with complete data packages containing evidence of the Harvester King threat, detailed analyses of galactic military capabilities, and proposals for unprecedented cooperation. As the Stellar Dawn prepared to depart for collective space, Commander Vex 9 found herself in an impossible position. She had to convince her superiors that everything they believed about galactic civilization was wrong, and that their survival depended on accepting alliance with a species that had spent centuries deceiving them. "Commander," Chen said as they prepared to separate, "I want you to understand something important. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to replace the collective's authority or impose our values on other species. We just want everyone to live long enough to have those philosophical debates." The human ships escorted the Stellar Dawn to the edge of the system before vanishing back into their hidden preparations. As they departed, Vex 9 couldn't shake the feeling that they had just witnessed the most important moment in galactic history. The Zephyrian crew spent their journey back to collective space, reviewing the evidence and struggling with its implications. Everything they thought they knew about humanity, about galactic threats, and about their own civilization's security had been fundamentally challenged. When they finally arrived at the main collective outpost, Vex 9 faced the most difficult briefing of her career. She had to explain that the gentle, recovering civilization they had observed was actually the most militarily advanced species in local space, and that everything the collective believed about galactic security was about to be tested by forces beyond their comprehension. The galaxy's peaceful age was ending, and humanity was offering alliance to species that weren't sure they wanted neighbors who refused to be helpless. The choice would determine whether galactic civilization survived or became another resource consumed by entities that viewed entire star systems as raw materials. In hidden facilities across Earth and throughout human space, preparations continued for a war that would decide the fate of every living thing in their region of the galaxy. Humanity had learned that survival required strength, and they were ready to teach that lesson to anyone willing to listen. The optimistic age of galactic exploration was over. The age of galactic survival had begun.